Welcome to another edition of the Kendrick Loves to Brand podcast, and we are here with Chuck Araneta. Welcome to the show, Chuck.
Uh, Thanks for having me, Kendrick. Maybe not a lot of people know, but we actually almost worked together a few years ago. We
Yes,
actually did for a while sa
correct.
previous version of podcast go. So yeah, it's a pleasure for me to join you here in your podcast.
Correct. I was actually gonna say nga, you're one third of one of the OG podcasts in the Philippines from the stands.
Yeah, it makes me sound so old. Tandaan na natin, pare. O baka ako lang.
We're always gonna be young at heart. So let's start from the very beginning. How did you start? How did you get into? Well, I guess let's start by asking you, what do you do now, and then how did you get into to what it is you're doing now?
Sure. I think actually the best way for me to explain what I'm doing now is to go back to the start. Because when I graduated from college back in 2007, I immediately went to a media network for marketing in GMA7. And I was actually there for 8 years. I But at the time, kasi while I was always enjoying my job in the corporate world doing marketing, um, yung my passion is always, and I think will always be in sports. So at the time, I was doing I had always had dreams even before I got into the corporate world of actually getting into sports, being a broadcaster and all of these things. But for some reason, maybe it was just not my time. I would always get roadblocked. I would never get an opportunity to actually get into the industry. Parating nag-audition ako, hindi ako natatanggap. And then, eventually it just got to a point and I said, bahala na, I'll just go back, I'll just stay in corporate. And that's why I stayed there for 8 years. But um, I would still try to remain connected to the sports world, which is why in 2010, me and a good friend decided to start our own sports podcast. For those who listen to podcasts, we were at the time kasi wala pang gumagawa niyan sa
Mm-hmm.
Pilipinas eh. We would listen to sports podcasts internationally, but for some reason, no one ever really did it locally. So I said, why not? Why not us? Diba? Why don't we try to do it? So that was our way of still being connected in the industry. And it took 5 years when we started that in 2015. When I decided na if I really want to get into the industry, I have to try to go into it na full 100%. Hindi lang parang sinisideline ko ng
Mm-hmm.
sports. I needed to really go all in. Kumbaga, I needed to bet on myself, and I did. I resigned from my corporate job. I moved to PLDT for a year, and I decided to pursue, work in sports. So I started out by writing articles for TV5 sports page. Then eventually I got opportunities to do radio sportscasting, eventually also for Signal. And then in 2018, that's when I was officially on board as one of these anchors and broadcasters for the PBA. So that's what I've been doing since basically 2018. I cover games for the PBA, for Gilas Filipinas. I also do production stuff behind the scenes. I write scripts, and then I still also write for our website. So yeah, 2015 I wasn't sure if I was all in. 2020 I'm definitely completely
Oh,
100% all in.
actually, I was gonna say, I've been a PBA fan also. Like I'm sure you are. Growing up, parang from the 80s, 90s. I think it's for me very refreshing to have your voice covering the broadcast of the games, because it's a different voice. It's not necessarily just because you're younger, but I think the it would help the PBA get a younger audience who maybe didn't used to mind the PBA, because I think the PBA was much more popular when we were younger, diba, sa generation natin,
Hmm.
parang medyo equal na
Sure.
PBA, NBA. But I think the younger generation now, I think it's fair to say the NBA has gotten to become so popular na most of the basketball fans here probably are not as into the PBA, diba? And I think having some new blood like yourself coming in and be able to give your perspective to the game when you do the broadcast, I think it helps. I think it helps bring a new audience to the PBA. What have
Yeah.
you what have you seen, or what have you gotten as a feedback since 2018?
The thing about the PBA, yeah, because you're. I mean, I'm not trying to. I don't think any of us currently will ever say na, we're experiencing the glory days of the PBA. Because undoubtedly it was in the 1990s and maybe the late 80s also with Jaworski, Ramon Fernandez, and then 90s of course Johnny Abarientos, blah blah blah. Now kasi sa panahon natin, the PBA is not only competing for eyeballs with the NBA, but it's competing with volleyball.
Mm-hmm.
It's competing with the MPBL, and not just that, it's also competing for eyeballs against other people, audiences who are into movie streaming, TV streaming, YouTube. So it's not the same market anymore back at when it was in 1990s. Except if you were a sports fan, you only literally had two choices: either to watch the PBA, maybe the UAP,
Mm-hmm.
and then of course the NBA. Pero ngayon kasi ang dami mo ng kalaban eh. And that's really been a challenge that we've had as broadcasters in the past few years. Eh. Kasi hindi na kasi pwede yung parang you take for granted na as soon as a person tunes in the first quarter of the game, tatapusin niya for 48 minutes, which is basically 2.5 hours. Eh. We need to try to make things always lively. We always have to make sure that our viewers are engaged. Kasi kung mabore sila, they have basically unlimited options to go to for their entertainment. Eh. So it's really a lot of pressure on the broadcasters now, but it's the kind of pressure now we really embrace because it challenges us to always be at our best, no matter whether we're covering a Wednesday game at 4 p.m. or a Ginebra game on a Sunday afternoon na talagang alam mong that's your biggest
Yeah.
audience. At the end of the day, we're all working together to really enhance the PBA as a product. To at least make sure na kung meron man kaming mga loyal listeners or followers na we still have them loyal to us, and of course trying to reach also maybe a more vibrant market kasi it's hard eh. There's just so many forms of content right now for people to really take
Yeah.
in especially in the past few years.
I think in terms of the future of the PBA also, it, I think the next few years would be crucial because a lot of the college stars that have pretty much grown up in this time of social media, that have a huge following, most times bigger pa than like the most established stars in the PBA now, diba? So I think
Sure.
once they get into the league, they'll be able to bring that attention to to the PBA, to their games. So hopefully nga hindi lang mapupunta lang lagi sa the marquee teams, diba? Which is one of the
That's
criticisms lagi.
Yeah. That's something na on a personal note also is na frustrating or nasasayangan ako kasi you want you want every team to be good eh. You
Mhm.
want teams to be competitive kasi if not, then if you're getting the same teams over and over again competing for the championship, then ma-isolate din yung mga fans na ibang teams that haven't been to the finals in a while. So yeah, we that's why kami production and the talents. We always look forward to the rookie draft. We always look forward to the first conference, the Philippine Cup, kasi doon yung testing grounds to see just how well an amateur player's fans or how much yung hatak niya will transfer to the PBA. Guys like Kiefer Ravena, of course,
Mhm.
have been able to stay relatively popular, moving from the UAP to the PBA. Guys like CJ Perez from Lyceum was also able to make the jump. So yeah, we're always cheering. We always welcome the new blood that's coming into the league every season.
How does your background from corporate in marketing, in GMA, how does that translate to your work now as a broadcaster? Do you still sort of input when it comes to marketing for the games?
Yeah, sometimes I feel like I do nga too much. Eh. I feel like in terms of like unsolicited opinions, masyado akong nagsosolicit ng opinion ko eh. I mean, without getting to specifics, are there things in marketing that I would like to see change or evolve or develop in the PBA? Without question. But really, what I've sort of been able to transfer from my time in corporate was, I think, the discipline and attention to detail when I'm preparing for this new work. I try to be as meticulous in my preparation when I'm covering games as I was, when I was preparing a pitch, when I was preparing a presentation to a client, or when I had to, do analytics also in the past. I try to make sure that whenever I'm doing something or whenever I'm covering a game, I have a complete set of information, and I basically have already a program flow of where I wanted to get to, in terms of maybe storylines of a player, storylines of a team. Because in our line of work, the one thing that you never want to do is to come into a game unprepared.
Mhm.
Kasi malalaman ka agad ng audience. Malalaman naman ng audience kung bini-BS ka lang ng broadcaster. I'm sure that you've seen a game, or maybe you've seen or something na parang if a broadcaster says a wrong fact or a wrong statistic, matitrigger ka kagad, tapos
Yes.
mag-iiba na yung tingin mo sa broadcaster or sa buong game. Mainis ka din sa buong game. So I try as much as possible when it's my turn to always be disciplined and to always know kumaga what I'm getting myself into, not just to go into it na without really having a solid game plan. And that's something that I was able to develop in my years in marketing.
How did you approach your very first game that you were called to be the lead broadcaster?
It was, I'll tell you, because when I started, the first time I ever did TV, I was actually as an analyst for Signal. And they put me in as analyst because they just wanted me to get my feet wet. I think they really wanted me to be the anchor or to be the play-by-play guy down the road. But because analyst, you don't normally have to say as much, and the pressure isn't on you as much. The first time I did a game, I think was in 2017. This was still for Signal, and I was obviously nervous about the entire situation. I just wanted to get over it, but I get through it pala. Like, I just didn't want to, say something that would get me in trouble. Baka bigla akong magmura sa gitna ng game na parang, or dahil yung parang ano lang, yung flow of thought would be super, super bad. But the reason why I was able to sort of figure out how to do this thing is because the first time I ever covered a game on TV, I did back-to-back games, and both games went to double overtime. So, like, by the first game, at the end of the first game, na nag-2 OT, my emotions were already shot. Kumbaga, binuhos ko na lahat ng emotions ko at damdamin ko. But then I realized I have to do one more game. Then it became a double OT. So everyone in production was telling me, alam mo, Chuck, kung kaya mong makatapos ng dalawang back-to-back OT, double OT, you can do anything. And that sort of was a reminder for me na, okay, at the end of the day, like, if you're a fan, you would love to see back-to-back double overtime games. But that drama is something that you can't manufacture. So from there, I just always remembered to always stay within myself and to just have fun doing this job, but at the same time being professional as well. And it's been that way for basically going on 4 years already.
Which do you prefer? Like, for the benefit of those who are not familiar, no? There's a play-by-play and there's a color commentary. Yeah. So which do you prefer? And maybe for the benefit of those who are not too familiar, what's the difference?
Sure. The play-by-play guy is the person who says, Jordan brings down the ball, crossover, passes to Pippen, and Pippen lays it in. That's that guy. The analyst is the one that says, Jordan had to give up the ball and pass it to Pippen because there was a double team coming from the Phoenix Suns. And then Pippen was able to finish because he had a full head of steam. So the play-by-play says what, and the analyst says why. That's basically their biggest difference. I am definitely most comfortable with being a play-by-play because the analyst role is mostly for former players that have knowledge and credibility, and also former coaches. Sila kasi talaga yung makakaalam, makakapagsalita with conviction and with credibility about why a team or a player is acting that way in that instance. So, for us guys who are comfortable naman, knowledgeable about basketball but don't really have that background, mas comfortable talaga kami, mas nasa wheelhouse namin talaga yung play-by-play. Kasi it allows us to just sort of paint a story, and then the analysts are the one choosing which colors to use on the brush.
Nice. Do you have a particular catchphrase that you've developed and you've sort of popularized?
Um, I don't. Well, humbly speaking, I don't think that I've been in the industry long enough really to create anything that has latched on. I try kasi to go into a game not necessarily looking for opportunities to say a catchphrase. Because I think then the temptation is that if you sort of give yourself a minimum, okay, I have to say bang, 20 times or 5 times in a game, parang pilit. Eh, like only like legends like Mike Breen can get away with saying bang from the first to the fourth quarter. Pero kung bata ka pa, and then you're using your catchphrase from the fourth quarter to the fourth, ano na medyo masakit siya sa tenga. Personally, that's just my opinion. So, what I've learned actually, and I learned this from mentors like Miko Halili, is that you have to be more comfortable first, being in the moment and telling the story, fluently and confidently, before you can actually go into catchphrases. And I think I'm at the point in my career yet now. I do like saying certain phrases like, if you're a wrestling fan, see Mick Foley, he has this time way then where he goes bang bang, and I like that. I like doing that also, like for certain moments. But there will be games na na I don't use it kasi parang hindi siya bagay sa moment, or parang I didn't really deserve that kind of exclamation. And I'm okay with it. I don't feel any regret na, uy, hindi ko nagawin yung catchphrase ko sa game na to. Kasi minsan di talaga siya babagay. So, that's one thing I've also learned, is never to put myself as a priority when I'm covering game. Because at the end of the day, it's not about me. It's about the game. It's about the fans watching the game. And I always try to make sure na alam kong, or I try to do what's best for them to enhance their viewing pleasure above and beyond whatever want or need I might have to create my own catchphrase. That for me, that's never really been a priority.
Nice. What's the best, or what has been the best feedback you've gotten from what you're doing?
The best feedback that I've gotten, strangely enough, is when I was covering a game. I think it was a Ginebra game. I remember now. It was a TNT versus San Miguel game. It was in the Commissioner's Cup in 2019. Because in our industry, in sportscasting, I think as with all industries naman, there's a certain hierarchy in terms of the legends, the guys like Seb Sarmenta, Magu Marjon. They will always be, in terms of covering the big games, sila talaga yung mga priority, sila Charlie Cuna, all those guys. So, kaming mga younger guys, we would always be the ones that would get, the earlier games, or the 4 p.m. Wednesday games. Kasi at the end of the day, parang production needs to know that they can trust us with the small opportunities before they can give us the bigger games talaga. So, when I was doing that game, it was in the finals, and I was finally given an opportunity because in my first year of covering for TV5, I wasn't given any finals games. It was only in my second year full-time covering for them na binigyan nila ako ng opportunity. So that TNT versus San Miguel game, it was an instant classic. Nag-double overtime din siya. Hindi ko alam bakit napupunta sa akin lahat ng overtime games. I think double or triple. Basta maraming overtime. And I remember that one of my sportscasting mentors, si Noli Iala, one of the great anchors, all play-by-play guys during the 90s, actually went out of his way to tweet and say that, na he's hoping that I would be given more opportunities to cover the finals in the future. And, that really meant a lot to me because to hear that from someone who I really look up to and respect as a broadcaster really meant a lot. Of course, I gave him a lot of thanks, and I told him I appreciated him because he didn't need to do that naman. He didn't need to go out of his way to give me props. But because for me, I've always believed that the best kind of feedback you can get is from someone who actually knows what he's talking about. Hindi lang yung random person on Twitter na may itlog sa icon nila, di ba? Na parang
Yeah.
gusto lang magbigay ng opinion niya. But, if you're hearing from mentors, if you're hearing from family, from friends who just want you to be better, want you to excel, that's the best kind of feedback you can get. So, that was really an encouragement for me and really helped me to try to push forward and be better in what I'm doing.
Nice. Especially, I think, yeah, as you said, coming from Noli Alan, no, parang growing up, he's actually one of, probably, if not my favorite, local play-by-play comedy. He has this line, I remember from before, nung rookie pa si Danny Seagal. When Danny Seagal drove base. Ikaw nang maging Danny Seagal, di ba? Oh my God, that's such a classic line. Until now, that still plays in my head from time to time.
Yep. Tsaka yung Sus Mariosep, di ba? Yes. Sa kanya yun eh. He's an absolute legend. And it was so good to see him actually covering games for Gilas in the SEA Games last year. So, I was just locked in and I was taking notes every time he'd cover a game. He's the man. He's the man.
Nice. Okay, coming from the best feedback, has there been like the worst feedback maybe from a troll na parang really got to you?
Nothing really got to me. The most negative feedback I'll get is, well, actually there are some that got to me. Probably the worst was when they say na biased ako sa team. I think for all of us, all broadcasters, before namin naging trabaho to, we were fans of the game. We still are fans of the game. And for me, I've always been a fan of Alaska, of the Alaska Aces. So one of the trickiest things really for a broadcaster is to turn that switch off and to always be completely objective when you're covering a game. Kasi hindi naman porke Alaska fan ako, cheer ako parati pag Alaska news, yay, Alaska! And then yung Pure Foods, dead man lang. Pero the thing is kasi fans of our podcast from the stands already knew na Alaska fan ako. So yung mindset nila or yung parang I guess yung stigma sa akin is that itong broadcaster na to, Alaska fan, bakit siya binibigyan ng games ng Alaska? Hindi niya kaya maging impartial. So there was this one game na it was Magnolia versus Alaska. Again, it was an overtime game. To white, punta na naman sa akin. And Alaska lost. And they were, I would receive messages from people on Twitter saying, ito namang anchor na to, pag lamang yung Alaska, parang excited siya, masaya siya. Pero nung dehado naman yung Alaska, biglang matamlay na siya, mahina na boses niya. And, it got to me kasi it made me sort of reevaluate, should I be doing a better job of being more impartial? And, that's the kind of feedback na I try to find if there's a glimmer of truth to it. And if there is, I try to improve and be better. Kasi hindi siya madali to be completely impartial after cheering for a team your whole life. It took a lot of practice. And, I don't think any of us are maybe 100% there yet. But I always remember that when I cover a game for my favorite team, for Alaska, I always remember that. Now I have to always stay in the moment, and I always have to stay completely objective. Kasi I'm doing din a disservice to fans of the other team kung masyado naman akong pabor sa isang koponan.
Well, I think, as you said, I can only imagine because I've been a fan of San Miguel, so I can't imagine being in that position. Siyempre, kung makascore yung favorite team that you've been cheering on for years and years of your life, yung parang may konting yes.
Diba? Parang papaano ka eh, papa-fist bump ka eh. Pero
diba?
After a while, Alaska became a team na rin. Because wala na rin namang familiar faces, wala na si Jeffrey Carriazo, wala na si Jola. So parang okay, it's a team. I'm getting there. Slowly but surely, I'm getting there.
Speaking of another favorite team, well, Chicago Bulls has been one of your favorite teams. And there's this documentary going on that just finished, actually, a couple of days ago. Diba? How has it been, rewatching the Last Dance and going through that whole, that peak time of Michael Jordan again?
Yeah. First and foremost, didn't this documentary just come at like a perfect time in human history? Kasi literal wala tayo ibang magawa ngayon eh. I mean,
Correct.
unless you're, working, you're working from home and then you can't tune in. But for us sports fans, literally 3 p.m. nakaabang na lahat to watch it eh. And I definitely enjoyed it. I enjoyed The Last Dance a lot. There were points wherein, because if you're a hardcore Bulls fan like me, you haven't really learned anything new from the documentary. Now you already knew before, eh. Like you knew that Pippen was underpaid. You knew that that Rodman was insane. You knew that nagsuntukan si Steve Kerr tsaka si Jordan. You know all of that, eh. But I think the magic or the best thing that this documentary did was remind everyone that Jordan's the GOAT. He is. Kasi I was reading this documentary, this article pala, about how a lot of young players now know Jordan, but have never actually sat down and watched an entire game. Eh. And if you just watch clips of Jordan's shot over Elo, the 91 Lakers, yung nag-switch siya, and then of course that shot over Utah, I don't think you're gonna get kung bakit siya yung GOAT. Kasi LeBron has a lot of shots like that. Kobe has a lot of shots like that. And sometimes they do it even better or even more spectacularly. But to really appreciate the greatness of Jordan, you have to watch an entire game. Eh? But you have to see how he controls the flow, how he is an absolute beast on defense, and how his footwork on offense is second to none. Lalo na pag nasa poste siya, di ba? Those are things that you really have to watch. And a lot of kids growing up right now don't really have that kind of a mindset, or really don't have that kind of an impression or knowledge of Jordan. And so that's what The Last Dance, I think, really did well. Parang it reintroduced him to an entirely new generation that hopefully will see na not just is Jordan a great player, but he is, the greatest of all time for many, many reasons.
Okay. Speaking of being the greatest of all time, I know you already have ready arguments against any LeBron fan, but if what are the maybe top reasons why, in your opinion, as a Jordan fan, as a Chicago Bulls fan, and also as a sportscaster, why LeBron is still not at Jordan's level?
First and foremost, I am a huge LeBron James fan. I hated him when he spurned my team in 2010. Diba? Nagka-decision siya. And then Chicago was one of the finalists. Diba? It was Chicago, New Jersey, New York,
yeah.
And Miami, yeah. So those are the teams na pinagpili ni MJ. Ni LeBron. So there was a time siguro from 2010 to 2015 na talagang sinusumpa ko siya. Like, ayaw mo sa amin, you're dead to me. But it came to a point na parang if you spend so many years, hating this transcendent player, then sayang din yung pagkakataon to watch a great player at the peak of his powers. Eh. So when he returned to Cleveland, and then of course they won the title, it really put him on a pedestal for me na unquestionably for this generation, he's the GOAT. The reason why I still think it's Jordan, beyond the 6 rings, is I think the way that he impacted the culture. I mean, this podcast is about marketing, and no one was really able to market himself. An athlete has never been marketed in quite the way that Jordan was. Diba? We've seen LeBron, of course. The unfortunate thing kasi for LeBron is everything that he's done since he followed Michael, lahat kasi mako-compare eh. Parang sumusunod siya parati sa yapak ni MJ eh. It's hard kasi when you're not the first person to do something. Like the first ever global icon is not LeBron, it's Jordan. And even before Jordan, it was Bird and Magic, diba? We talk about the scoring. Yes, LeBron has more points than Jordan, but in terms of like impact moments, in terms of like overall body of work, diba? Jordan, even at such a fewer years played, still has elite numbers na pantapat kay LeBron. Eh. I'm not even talking about the championships because six championships compared to 3.
Yeah.
Malayo siya, di ba? So it's unfortunate kasi I think the reason why for me LeBron will never really be the GOAT is because he's always going to be compared to Michael. He didn't have this opportunity to create his own legacy. Kasi nung bata pa siya, entering the league pa lang kino-compare na natin siya eh. And to a certain extent, sayang din eh. Kasi I think we don't always have to compare. I think we can appreciate a person on his own merits. Like, eventually, that's what I did for Kobe. Kobe kasi nung nag-start siya, akala ko naman ito, gaya sa kay Jordan eh. But eventually, di ba, he became his own person eh, when he was able to lead his own team. And I think that's the way that we have to also treat LeBron eh, na parang, if we spend all of the remaining years of his career na parati natin siyang kino-compare kay Jordan or GOAT discussion, sayang din eh. We're missing what he's doing in the present in trying to lead the Lakers to a championship. So I think that's something na we have to give him more props also. Because he's still going strong, bro. And he's our age. Or like he's a year older than I am. But how in the world are you doing these things? It's incredible.
Correct. I think I think it's fair to say that objectively speaking, MJ is still by far the GOAT. But I think as you said, it's important to also appreciate greatness for greatness' sake, diba? And what LeBron is doing. The fact lang na like I'm cheering for him to get as close as possible. Kasi the fact that you can see someone try to achieve that level of perfection that Jordan sort of achieved, diba? 6 out of 6 titles and all that. Parang just to have somebody come close, I think, or at least go on that journey to try to reach that almost impossible standard. I think it's worth appreciating. So let's look. Who is the Michael Jordan, or who is the GOAT in your field that you look up to?
Isa lang. Can there be GOATs?
Sige, pwede.
In terms, in my field, definitely it's Miko Halili and Sev Sarmenta. My personal GOATs. Kasi, they'll always talk about the greats like Joe Cantada. But, he wasn't really part of my consciousness when I was growing up in the 90s. For me, it was Miko in what he did in the early 2000s because of, his time in the UAP and then in the PBA. And then, of course, he said just body of work. And I guess biased also. The reason why those guys are the GOATs, in my opinion, is because since day one, since I decided when I got into the industry, they have always been looking out for me. They've always been willing to give me advice, to give me stinging criticism pag kinakailangan. And they've looked out for me. And I guess that's the reason why, I always put those guys on a pedestal. Kasi, I appreciate where I am right now dahil sa kanila. And the fact that they're still amazing storytellers, during this time. I mean, Miko's still killing it in the UAP. Sir Seb also. It's like a clinic when he does a game in the PBA. So those are my GOATs for sure.
How about outside of the Philippines? Like, is there somebody that you would want to have, the chance to just sit down one-on-one, just be able to pick their brains?
Sure. My favorite broadcasters are, of course, Mike Breen, Kevin Harlan also, and Ian Eagle, who is the broadcaster for the Brooklyn Nets, and also does TNT sometimes. But like my GOAT, my favorite broadcaster, bar none of all time, is really Ernie Johnson from TNT. Kasi not just his ability to host, to tell a story, to manage all kinds of personalities, but really just his life. I'm Christian also, the way that he's a Christian as well, and he's never been shy to talk about his faith. And that's been inspiring for me also. So he's a guy na, I really look at and I say na, if I was going to have a career deep into my life, I would really love to have a career like his, full of dignity, full of really just good spirit, but at the same time, absolute best what he's doing. I mean, diba? Parang may mamanage si Barkley, si Shaq, saka si Kenny Smith.
Yes.
no one can do it but him, diba? Like minsan sa inside the NBA, they have mga guest guest hosts eh. Pag wala si EJ, doesn't work eh.
Yeah,
Diba?
yeah.
It's really Ernie Johnson lang talaga eh. And it's just his ability to really manage and police everyone. That's why idol ko talaga siya.
Nice. How about in terms of uh, we talk about like some of the highlights of your young career in broadcasting. Has there been a particular adversity or what you would consider like a failure so far?
Um, Probably the biggest failure. Well, biggest challenge I've had definitely was I was covering. It was my first time to cover a Manila Classico game, the a Ginebra versus Pure Foods game, 2018 I think, 2018 or 2017, I don't remember. And that morning, I found out that my uncle, who I was really close to, passed away.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and ano siya, he passed away in his sleep. So it was super abrupt. Like I woke up that morning and then my sister was crying on the phone. My uncle kasi he was special siya. He was mentally what's the term? Parang he had learning disabilities. So basically he was a 50-year-old man trapped in a 8-year-old's body. 50-year-old 8-year-old's mind trapped in a 50-year-old body. So but because he was at a time na kaya naman niya talagang, he could do everything, like he could communicate, he could speak and everything. The one thing we always had in common, the one thing we bonded over together was our love for video games. Like we both love to play video games. The just difference was that siya, since tanda na siya, yung gusto niyang video games parating stuck sa family computer. So maglalaro kami parating ng family computer. Yung mga PS4, PS3, hindi na niya alam eh. Talagang family computer lang. Hanggang dun lang yung kaya niya. So that's something we bonded over talaga. And it broke my heart to when I found out that he had passed away. But the thing is, a few hours later, I'd have to do the game. Now, I think that maybe now, since I've been doing this for a while, if I had asked to maybe get a sub, baka naman kaya. But I don't think I was in a position yet back in that time, 2017, I think, to really say na hindi ko kaya, pasab muna ako. Especially during this biggest game of the season, and a lot of people were really, banking on me to deliver. So, yeah, I had to do that game. Probably like an hour, or maybe even like when I got to the broadcast booth, I was still crying at the moment. I had to, calm myself, and I had to try to gather myself to do that game. And I don't remember a single moment of that game because as soon as that game was over, I rushed out and I went back to be with my family. That was maybe the biggest challenge. But when I was thinking about it afterwards, it just sort of reminded me of just how beautiful this game is, that I was able to I was able to stop from grieving maybe for just 2 hours in order to do this basketball game. And it's a simple thing, and maybe it wasn't it wasn't the greatest game. Ginebra won by double digit points, but I guess I needed that game somehow in order to just be free from the sorrow for that moment. So yeah, I'll never forget that game.
Thank you for sharing that, Chuck. Let's switch gears here for a bit, because aside from being one of the top broadcasters, sportscasters in the country, you're also a host for weddings. So how has this whole COVID situation been for the industry?
Yeah, first and foremost, it's been tough. Actually, even before this, I was just talking to a couple who just decided to postpone their wedding. Yeah, well, actually, not just weddings, but corporate events as well. At the start of the year, I was already, I joined my uncle's training company. He was mentored by Francis Pangilinan. Tapos, nag-start up siya na sarili niyang training for corporate. So for corporate rather. And all of that's gone. That is gone in 2020. It's been tough, but I guess what this pandemic has really challenged me to do is to not be Uh, I guess to it's to not place my eggs in one basket lang. I need I need to be versatile. I need to have a plan B all the time. That's why I guess somehow nakatulong din yung background ko with marketing kasi I know at least kahit paano I still have opportunities beyond broadcasting kasi I still have knowledge and familiarity. I'll definitely need to brush up with digital and all of these things. Pero I'm coming into this new age, this new normal na parang knowing na I can still contribute something beyond broadcasting. So that's been, I guess, a comforting aspect. And I guess one of also the reasons why I'm thankful na I decided to still get into marketing or to the corporate world before I got into broadcasting. That's my long-winded way of saying I'm trying to still pivot to new opportunities moving forward.
Now, speaking of new opportunities, it's actually not new. Like, as we mentioned at the top of the interview, you're one of the original podcasters in the country, and you've recently revived your show, with Carlo. How did you get started with podcasting? You mentioned like you saw that there was a dearth or a limited number of podcasts tackling local sports. So how did you guys get started and take us through like those years when you were building, because your show got really popular, obviously for a number of years.
Sure. It really started nga kasi it as with all great products, I'm sure you know this kind of, because you've created a lot also. You have to fulfill a need, diba? And the need, in my estimate, was no one's talking about sports, no one's talking about local sports. You have NBA content, and you can get that anytime. Pero yung local, walang gumagawa. Like we'd read blogs, we'd read recaps back in the day. Pero you don't really have normal people like me discussing sports. So that's the need that we wanted to fill. Like we wanted to be the guys that regular people go to when they want to listen to people talk about a topic or a player or a news item. Kasi yung attack namin or I guess yung perspective namin was we never looked at ourselves as experts or people that were more knowledgeable than the regular fan on Twitter or on Facebook. Kumaga, we were them. It just so happened that we had a microphone that was in front of us, and then we shared our thoughts. We broadcasted it to the world. It was horrible. yung production namin at the start, it was just me and my laptop recording into microphones, and then I would edit it crudely on GarageBand. I had to learn for myself things like uploading podcasts, hosting them on a web hosting site, podcast site, and even social media. Using my Twitter, my social media accounts to push all of our podcasts. But it was fun. It was fun because we knew that we were doing something original and fresh at the time, and that allowed us to really gain a foothold because we had people that were really tuning in and looking forward to the podcasts on a weekly basis. Because the one thing that we really wanted to do was make sure that we were on a schedule that we were going to follow. So at the time, it was every Thursday at 12 noon, maglalabas kami ng bagong episode. So, sometimes I'd be late kasi I'd have to work. Kasi I'd edit them during lunch break in office. I'm sure your wife saw me edit them one time or another. nung nagsabay pa kami. But yeah, I'd be late kasi may meeting kami na nag-extend to lunch. Tapos mga 1 p.m. nagre-reklamo na yung mga tao. Saan yung podcast? Ba't di pa kayo nag-upload? Okay lang ba kayo? Mga ganun pa yung question na alala ko. So, that really, I guess, drove us. Na, obviously, we did not have an audience as big as, a mainstream TV audience or, TV show. But we were creating content for an audience. And those were the people that we were listening to. Those were the people that we were getting feedback from. And those were the people for whom we really wanted to improve what we were doing. And that pushed us to be better. That pushed us to be braver and to be bolder with what we were doing. And we did that for a solid 6 years. we would get all kinds of content. I mean, we would get all kinds of mentors helping us. And then eventually in 2015, we transitioned to video with a group called New Media Factory. Sila yung nag-host yung podcast ni Mo Twister Good Times with Mo. Sila gumawa niyan. And then that opened us to an even bigger audience. So yeah, and the only reason why we had to stop or take a long hiatus was life got in the way in terms of we made sports from what was like our side hustle, something that we did on the side. We made that our full-time job now. So we couldn't give it the amount of love and attention that we wanted to, that we were giving it before we got into the industry full-time. But it was always there. And the reason why we got back into the podcast this year was we just felt also that now is a good time to help other people, just get their minds off of the situation in the world right now. The tough situations, all the struggles that our frontliners, our family and friends are facing. So yeah, we reconnected with that audience, and then we wanted to make sure na we would always have engaging content for them para naman makatulong kahit paano in this time of anxiety and really troubled times.
At its height, at the height of the first 6-year run that you guys had, how big was the audience that you were able to build?
Well, it was good enough to get us nominated for a best podcast. Globe used to do these annual awards, and yeah, I'll never forget that because we were sitting beside Chico and Delamar, and and yung Yuga Tech, they had also their own podcast at the time. So I'll never forget because like we'd go in there and then literally no one knew who we were, but somehow it was because of our fans who kept voting us in. Umabot kami as finalists, and we didn't win. But alam mo yung feeling na pag umabot ka sa NBA Finals for the first time, masaya ka lang na nandun.
Yeah.
That was our feeling. The fact na umabot kaming finalists, we were happy already to be finalists for Globe Tattoo's best podcast. So we didn't care. Like, we were just happy to be there. And yeah, in terms of our audience, we would get a solid maybe 5 to 10,000 listeners weekly, and that was just because we were pushing our podcast relentlessly talaga. So yeah, it was a good audience. It was a niche audience, but sometimes those are the kind of people you want listening to your podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Yung mga talagang loyal listeners that we engaged with on social media, and we're still friends with some of them. Even to this day, it's because they were part of our, what we called an FTS fam, from Stands fam, and they knew kasi that we were making the content for them.
Nice. What's your typical day like now? Well, sure, maybe not now because it's really not a typical day now. But before, like when you had like a schedule for a game, what would be your schedule like? If the game is, let's say, at usually 7 p.m. or 4 p.m., what's your schedule
right
like?
My schedule starts the night before pa. Kasi if I have a game, I make sure that the night before pa lang, I'm already locked in. Like, as much as possible, I don't go out. I don't, I don't really do anything. Like, I try as much as possible na hindi ako mag-back-to-back na I'm hosting a wedding, the next day I have a game. Unless talagang kailangan because of schedule. But otherwise, I really try to make time that day. Kasi when I have a game day, for me, it's basically on the level of how an athlete looks like at the game. My entire day is revolving around that 4-hour block. I say 4 hours kasi call time namin is 2 hours before the game. So the game's at 4. I'm in the venue by 2 p.m. already. So as you can imagine, that's not a lot of time really to prepare and to do things. Kasi sa traffic ngayon ng Manila, di ba?
Yes.
Kung nakatira ako sa QC, tapos yung game namin sa Cuneta, sa Dome or MOA in Pasay, that's like an hour and a half, 2-hour drive. So really the only time I have with my family for game day is over breakfast and maybe over lunch. But if I have production meetings or something, talagang tuhog na ako. I'll have lunch lang on the road, or sometimes I even have lunch when I'm there. And then yeah, from those 4 hours really are all I'm thinking about for the entire day. And then after the game, when I get home, it takes me then a while to wind down because I'm still amped up. I'm still hyped
Yep.
from of course from covering a game, lalo na kung maganda yung game. It takes me a while to sort of wind down. Like I always have to play with my kids, or I always have to talk with my wife. Kasi if you leave me by myself, inisip ko parati what I should have done. Maybe I should have said this, or sana ito na lang ginawa ko, di ba? Or maybe I could have called this moment highlight better. But yeah, that's basically it in a nutshell. My prep for a game starts the night before, because I have to prepare, I have to look for stats, I have to look for storylines. All of these things come into play even before I step into the announcer's booth.
Nice. We're heading towards the latter part of the show now. There's 3 questions I always ask all my guests. So they all pertain to legacy. Remember, obviously we're still young, but it always helps to sort of have the end in mind, diba? So the first question is, knowing everything that you know now, if you can go back in time to, let's say, let's pick a time. Siguro yung time when you finally decided to go for it, to go like full on into sports, and you only had a minute to talk to Chuck at that particular point when you made that decision. What would you say to yourself?
I would tell myself to not be afraid to bet on yourself. I would tell the 2015 version of me na what you're about to embark on is an insane journey. It's something that it's not going to be easy, but you will have people behind you all the time. First and foremost, you need to have your wife on board. Because if your wife's not on board, diyan ka na sa corporate, we're gonna be pipilitin, pare. I tell the real talk. That's the first thing I would say. Your wife gotta be on board. Diba? But if she's on board, don't be afraid to bet on yourself. Kasi at the end of the day, kung alam mo naman yung kaya mong gawin, at alam mo kung ano yung skill set mo, you've got to do it. It's gonna be scary at times, but that's part of what makes this world good, fun, and worth it. It's the fact na hindi mo alam kung kailan when you're gonna give your best performance, when you're gonna give your worst performance. So it's definitely what I say to myself: don't be afraid to just jump off the cliff.
Nice. All right. Second question. What else?
But definitely get your wife on board first.
On board. That's the first step.
Last. Whether you're going full time or you're starting a business, your wife gotta be on board.
For sure. That's practical advice.
Yes.
So the second to the last question is, what else are you looking to accomplish over the next 10 years?
In my work, you mean?
Yeah.
First and foremost, to have live sports back. That would be a good start. Matapos na to lahat. Probably, what I want to accomplish in the next 10 years is to have sustained excellence. Kasi I'm at a point wherein I know I have so much more to learn. I know that I have so much more to improve on. And getting there is really what I am trying to achieve. Not being satisfied with pwede na. That's something I also learned from marketing. Diba? Sometimes you have an idea. Pero kung yun yung initial idea mo, more often than not, it's either gas-gas na or parang nagawa na eh. It's always a third or fourth idea when you go back to the drawing board and when you get feedback. That's when you really get your best idea. So yeah, I want to be excellent in everything I do, whether it's hosting an event, whether it's broadcasting a game, whether it's being a good father, being a good husband. I want to be excellent in everything I do.
All right. Before I ask the final question, I just wanted to acknowledge you, Chuck. As somebody who's known you also for a few years, so we're not that close, I know, but somebody who's seen how you've grown also and how you've taken this leap, from a few years back to going into sportscasting full time. It also inspired. It's very inspiring. Even if I'm already doing something that I love, whenever I see somebody go full on to what they love and what they're
Mm-hmm.
passionate with, and excel. It's always inspiring. So I just wanted to acknowledge you for that, and I hope that
Likewise,
I hope
likewise for
I
sure.
hope that your story continues to inspire other people to go for it and bet on themselves. So the final question is, how do you, Chuck Araneta, want to be remembered?
Uh, I want to be remembered first and foremost as like I talked about excellence. I don't want to be excellent just to be the best at what I do. Uh, the excellence that I strive to be is to know that at the end of the day, I did not leave anything I did not leave anything behind, or kumbaga, I left everything on the floor. In everything I do, whether it's covering a game nga, or whether it's hosting an event, I want everyone to know that kitang-kita nila na talagang binuhos ko lahat ng dugo ko, lahat ng pawis ko, lahat ng malalabas sa bibig ko. Binuhos ko talaga for that. The legacy really I want is that is someone who always who just appreciated the moment that I was in, whether it's at an event, whether it's at a basketball game. Never too high, never too low. Someone who was always thankful for every opportunity. And just someone who na maasahan, someone who's reliable. I guess that's one thing that that's one thing that all broadcasters want to be known for. Reliability, maasahan. Whether it's an enormous game, whether it's a horrible game between Kia and Blackwater, those kind of games na you just watch the replays for na lang. Like I want to be at the same level whether I'm there, kasi that's what people appreciate. That's what people will respect.
Nice. I think on that note, we can say, ikaw nang maging Chuck Araneta.
Sus Mariosep.
Sus Mariosep. Thank you so much, Chuck. This has been fun. Thank you so much.
I appreciate you having me on your podcast, Kendrick, and congratulations on everything, man.
Thank you guys for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please rate and review the show on iTunes. It will help more people discover the show. You can also share a screen cap of the show on your social media accounts. Make sure to tag me and let me know which part of the episode you like or didn't like. All feedback is certainly welcome, so feel free to reach out to me on Instagram @KendrickCo to let me know what topics you'd like to be covered next and who you want to hear or learn from in future episodes. Until next time, do the work you want to see done, because life's too short to not be creating your life's work.